Welcome back to the King's Report for June 30th, 2018, the last day of the first half of the year. Tim Elder and now Jim Stevens, King James of the Stevens Kingdom, is joining me as well.
Good morning.
Good morning. We are here representing the second king of Cheongguk, Hyung Jin-mun. And Jim is here to talk about a book that he wrote and put out, I think, a couple of years ago now, isn't it?
Yes, I think it was 2016.
Yes, I noticed the copyright is 2016, and it's titled 100 Proofs for God. We are, our congregation is a free association of families under True Father's authority, each of whom have our own ministries, and this is definitely Jim's ministry project, I think, that Father must be really proud of. And this is quite a substantial book. I got this, I think I bought this online, I think, and it has about, 370 pages, including the footnotes and comments.
Yes.
Yes, and there are, in fact, 101 ways in which you can prove that God exists.
There's a lot more than that.
There are in this book, there are 101 ways, right?
Correct.
Okay. So this is 101 sample ways, I guess. You can prove that God exists. And
just to get you started.
Well, first thing I want to ask is, when I look at this book, this was quite a project. This was an incredible project. And I just wonder, how did you decide to make the commitment of time and resources and the brain energy to follow through on a project like this? That was quite a commitment that you made. I'm curious about how that came about.
It's quite an interesting story for me. Let me read just from the introduction. Whose children just didn't care, didn't think about him, didn't want to make a relationship with him. And that's, billions and billions of people. And so then I got this idea to prove God exists and write a book. And my background is engineering. And so I wanted to use scientific proofs, logical proofs, that kind of thing, for people like me. And I wanted to keep it short so that you could read it in 2 or 3 or 4 minutes. So I wanted each one to be, 2 or 3 pages long, and just a summary or synopsis. So I started doing research, and it was...
Yeah, that's one of the really wonderful things about this book, is that you can just open it up at random.
Yes.
And for example, here, chapter
there is
78.
no order.
Yeah, there's no order. Okay.
Particularly.
Chapter 78. And chapter 78 is about 4 pages long, and I can just go here to another chapter, 97, and that's about. And you can just read that one chapter, and random.
And some are really scientific and in depth, and others are just about animals like the giraffe or the camel, chimpanzees. There's something for everybody in here. I was amazed when I looked at it in the end and realized I started writing a kind of a promotional thing, and I realized this is for old people, this is for young people, everybody can find something in here that they're interested in. The rest of it's not important, you know. And what happened was each time I would finish a proof, and I didn't know where to go next, and so I'd just start praying, and then I would read over here, oh, that's interesting, and I'd read over here, that's interesting, and then I'd read something, I'd go, wow, and it would just take over for a while. It was like God was pushing me. I would pray, what do you want me to do today? He said, work on your book. was kind of the thoughts I kept getting, and it just. In the end, I was trying to do 2 proofs every month because I didn't want it to go on forever, right? Some of it gets really detailed. So you start looking at blood and all the different aspects of blood and what's in the blood, and it's like, wow, it's unbelievable. Or just the retina of your eye. It's as thin as saran wrap. And yet there is so much going on there. So much. I wanted to share. I look at my book. I bookmarked all these different pages of amazing. And that's not even. I got tired. I couldn't keep going. But some of the. It is just everywhere you look, it's infinite, and God is there. It's just. Yeah.
I'd like to read from the back cover here. Because I think this blurb that you've written here is really quite nice. The vast majority of people in this country say they believe in God, but why? Can they prove it, or is it just a feeling? This book will help. A lot of very smart people are convinced that we descended from monkeys, and long before that, it was amoebas. They think that all life came about accidentally, a bazillion to 1 chance, but we won the lottery of lotteries. Do you know enough science, especially the latest discoveries, to be able to refute them convincingly and even change their minds? This book will help. Most of us as kids believed in Santa Claus, and most of us taught our children that he existed as well. After all, there was clear evidence he existed on Christmas morning. What about God? Would you like to know good evidence for children and teens, oldsters too, that God is real, not just a Santa myth? This book will help. You are an expert on something for sure, but do you have expertise on God? Have you researched the arguments for Darwinism enough to know what it is really implying and why it is actually anti-scientific? This book will help. Knowing with certainty that God exists has tremendous implications for your life, and also significantly there are likely consequences when this life is over if any part of you continues to exist in another realm. Peruse this book. Something in it will catch your eye. Read that chapter. It will make you think, and that could change your life for the better. That is really nice. Yeah.
God helped me write a lot of that.
All right, tell me some of the favorite ones that you have.
Well, I want to read one that it blows my mind every time I read it. This is from the chapter on mathematics.
Okay, can we? This is what chapter now? This is
29.
29. Let's ask the tech team to bring that up on for the people watching.
So go down near the bottom. There's a paragraph that starts out, just for fun, here's one number. It's fourth paragraph from the bottom. Let me read. Just for fun, here's a number that I read which fascinated me. A mathematician, and there's a footnote where that comes from, calculated the time it would take under very suitable conditions for a usable protein to hook up all the different amino acids necessary. Proteins are very, very complicated. And there are 20 different amino acids that would have to be put together in the right way. So that number was 10 to the 171st power years. So when we start getting into really big numbers, they are very hard to comprehend. That doesn't seem like such a big number. Well, actually, there are only 10 to the 80th power of atoms in the whole universe. So here's what that number would be in some sense by our reality. If you gave an amoeba 10 to the 171 power years, he could carry every single atom in the universe, one by one, all the way across the universe and back, which is 30 billion light years across, more than 600,000 trillion times if he were traveling at the unbelievably slow speed of 1 inch every 15 billion years, which is the age of the universe.
What?
What?
That's a lot of trillions there, yeah. Trillions and billions.
An amoeba could walk across the universe trillion times in that number of years. And that was the number that it would take for one protein, and our body has some, if I can't remember the number, 53,000 proteins or something like that. That kind of stuff comes across. I throw that in because as an engineer, I go, wow, look at these numbers. That whole chapter on mathematics, I think I started that chapter with in the third paragraph, I talk about the Wistar Institute Symposium that was held. It was on mathematics, had to do with neo-Darwinian theory of evolution. This was back in 1966. Nobel Prize winning mathematicians got together and said evolution is not possible. And they proved it mathematically, that you just cannot get it to happen accidentally. The odds are too great against it. And there was a lot of course, debate, and I went back and forth. They had 2 more conferences after that, but this actually forced the Darwinists to give up the theory of slow and gradual change. And then they switched to a thing called punctuated equilibrium. On my webpage, 101 Proofs for God, up at the top on the right, I think I listed 4 proofs, 4
you
particular
have
proofs.
18, 17, 64, and 73, yeah.
Yeah.
The fossil record, the truth about mutation, missing links, and punctuated equilibrium.
Yeah, those are 4 key ones. If you really want to look at the Darwinism and the theory of evolution and where it's at today, because the fossil record, and that's another amazing story, is that the fossil record, Darwin predicts that everything will evolve slowly and gradually over time in this kind of way. But actually, the fossil record is zzz, and then like that. It's like in 1% of the timeline of the history of the Earth, in 1% of that time, all the fossils appear and all of the record of all creation. So they had to adjust their theory. So the evolutionists keep bouncing around and changing, and so they came up with a new thing called punctuated equilibrium that almost nobody's ever even heard of. In school, you're still taught the slow and gradual theory of evolution. Well, punctuated equilibrium means everything stays the same until suddenly it changes. But it only changes in very small populations, and it's a rapid change. But because it's a small population and it's remote and we won't ever be able to find the fossils. Oh, come on, man. Is this science? I go, the mutation, and the 2 things that the theory of evolution is based on is random mutation and survival of the fittest, or natural selection.
Yes.
Neither one of those is scientific. Neither one of those works. Mutation, when you go to the dentist, they put a lead vest over your, when they give you x-rays. X-rays cause mutations.
Right, yes.
That's right. They don't want you to get the benefits of x-rays. and mutations. There was a guy, Theodore Dubchansky, who mutated fruit flies for 40 years. He never got anything but fruit flies. The best he could do was got 4 wings, but the 2 other wings were not. They were useless. So all of that kind of stuff is in my book. I go into the scientific, I look at mutation, I look at natural selection, all of those things very deeply. If you want to go that way, if you want to go just have fun, then that's all in there too. Some of that stuff. Some things just. I felt so amazed by, like flowers. I'm looking at my book here in the corner. You see the flowers. That was
In the upper
right-hand corner. What's that number? Flowers. It's one of the early ones.
2? Is that ugly flowers?
Oh, yeah, 2. Ugly flowers. There are something like 270,000 different species of flowers. So by random development, you would think that a lot of them would be ugly, right? I mean, just random, if they grew randomly, you'd have a lot of ugly flowers. But there aren't any. It doesn't make any sense. You look at, even dandelions, kids love them, So everything in creation is beauty. It's for us. It was fun. I just had a lot of fun. I was just pushed and I was excited so often. And that's what I hope comes through if somebody reads the book. Actually, online, you can read everything. You don't have to buy the book. You can just go to the website. What I did was I blogged each one as I wrote it. I put it up on a Google blog, and then I turned it into a book later on. So in some ways, the blog is even better than the book because there's a lot more pictures. They charge you an arm and a leg to put a picture in your book. So...
All right, let's take a break, and we'll be back in a minute or so with more from Jim Stevens and his book, 100 Proofs for God, and his website is 101proofsforgod.com. All right, we'll be back in a minute or so.
Hi there, folks, and look at what I've got here today. My God, take a look at this. This is a BFR in 454 Casull with an octagonal barrel, magna porting, micarta grips. And look at that, it even has my initials on it, JM. Look at that thing of beauty, my God. Pop open the cartridge insertion door, and look at that cylinder spin. The finest revolvers in the world. Woo! That's a cannon. That's a cannon. Oh, man. Pretty accurate, though. on target. Oh, boy. Massive repo.
At break of day, in hope we rise, we speak your name.
Welcome back to the King's Report for Saturday, June 30th of 2018. Tim Elder and Jim Stevens in for the second King of Chanukuk, Hyungjin Moon, and we're talking about Jim's book, 101 Proofs for God. And Jim, you know, I actually, after I graduated from college, I had an experience that's similar to some of your Proofs for God, and that is that I got a job with a pharmaceutical company, a large multinational pharmaceutical company, and they were going to train me. And so my first assignment was to do some sales work. And so, you know, I was going to visit doctors and pharmacies and, you know, convince doctors to prescribe more of our medication and make sure that pharmacies had it in stock and that kind of stuff. And so they put me through a 2-week crash course on their best-selling drug, which acted in the kidney. So, you know, I had to learn about the kidney for 2 weeks, and they put me in a motel with a workbook, I think about this thick, and for 2 weeks from morning to night, I just studied about the kidney.
My gosh.
And I don't remember very much of it now, but I remember that when I finished studying, I just sat back and thought, wow, there has got to be a God. Because the kidney was much more complex and complicated, and the engineering of the kidney was more complicated than I had ever imagined. And I just thought, you know, this cannot be a random thing. There has to be an intelligent designer behind this, that it would do all the functions that it does. Not just, you know, it's not just a sieve. It's not.
Yes.
It's much more than that. It controls the levels of not only water in our body, but also various nutrients, so forth. You know, and I remember studying about you know, potassium and sodium and all sorts of stuff there. I don't remember any of it now, but so for me that was a proof of God.
The human body is a proof of God.
Yes, and I thought, this is just the kidney. Imagine if every other part of the body is this amazingly constructed, with this kind of amazing engineering.
Yes.
There has to be a God. And I think you were telling me before we began that 101, there's actually a lot more than 101 proofs for God. This is just a sample of the proofs for God.
That's right.
But you could have had 1,001.
1,000,001.
Yes. But tell us about more of the chapters that particularly moved you.
Yeah, I wanted to jump to chapter 77, God of the Gaps.
And if the tech team can bring that up.
Yeah, sometimes people will say to you as some pushback about this. They'll say, well, we haven't, this was, God of the Gaps was an explanation. So let me read this here. If you start to share with people some of the recent scientific evidence that points to God as a master designer, you may hear the rebuttal for someone that your evidence is just a God of the Gaps explanation. It might even be said with some condescension. There's no need for you to fear the God of the Gaps slur, and I'll tell you why. But first, it was God of the Gaps. What is the God of the Gaps term? It was actually invented by Christian theologians who were trying to identify a certain strategy for proving that God exists, which they assumed is doomed to failure, the God of the Gaps term. So if you try to argue for God scientifically by saying the scientists have no answer for something, therefore it must be God behind it, Eventually, science may discover a materialistic process that does explain that. So therefore, if they do, then God is pushed out. In other words, you said it was God, but then they found out it was science, so there's no God. So you get, oops, excuse me.
Who's calling you at 6:30 in the morning? Or is that your morning alarm?
Sorry, folks.
Okay.
So if you say, then the gaps get filled in by science, and then God gets pushed farther and farther away, so there's
Sure,
less and
right.
less proof.
For example,
of that.
people in the past might have thought that like lightning, for example, was God.
Yeah.
But science explains it. Benjamin Franklin sort of explains it, and then, okay, it wasn't God after all. That kind of thing. Okay,
That's
all right.
So, excuse me. But as it turns out, the gaps in science are getting bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger, and making it more and more difficult for them to explain it. And here's some I call mind-blowing fact, but I'm now down at the paragraph that starts, here's a totally mind-blowing fact I heard just today. I'm sure it's going to be very controversial for years to come. It's totally beyond my understanding of how such a calculation could be made, so I'm only reporting this research. Here it is. Astrophysicists at UCLA have calculated that the total density of the mass of all the particles in the whole universe is so absolutely precise that changing the density by a single grain of sand would have caused the whole universe to cease to exist. So think about that. Now, I'll jump down another paragraph. The density of the universe was so precise at 1 nanosecond after the Big Bang, and then I give that density, that a variation of 0.2 of a gram would mean no universe. Why was that? Because if it weighed too much, then it would all collapse in on itself. If it didn't weigh enough, it would just keep on expanding and there would be no universe. There'd be no stars. There'd be nothing. 0.2 of a gram of mass difference, and there'd be no universe. That's what they calculated. So
that blows your mind, yeah.
good. All right, thank you. That's good. It blew my mind. I mean, people are really smart. I mean, how do you ever put that together? How do you ever calculate that? I mean, I'm just dumbfounded by the brilliance of some scientists. And yet, there are people who just keep insisting there's no God. How can you look at this and have an open mind and say there's no God? It's like, what? What are you smoking? Right? Anyway.
Yeah.
Let me go to another one. Go to chapter 14, empty space. So I'm going to read that. I'm going to start reading at the second paragraph. How much space is there? The current estimate is that the atom is 99.9999999% empty space. There are 13 decimals to the right of the decimal point. All the matter of all the humans on Earth could fit inside a sugar cube with room to spare.
So if you were to take out all the space,
Take out all the
take out all the
space,
air, or it's not actually
Not
air,
air,
it's
empty
it's
space.
empty space.
and all
Yeah.
the humans,
And all the humans on Earth.
we would all fit inside a sugar cube with room to spare. So really, we're just empty space.
Just empty space.
We're just energy. So we exist because God made us, and all our reality is just empty space, actually. I was like, oh, really?
So let's read this paragraph here. To get some perspective, take a grain of rice representing an atomic nucleus and place it at the center of a football or baseball field in a large stadium. then the seats of the outer limits of the stadium would be similar to the area of electron field of the grain of rice nucleus. However, you need to think about the stadium as being a sphere and not just a horizontal structure, which makes the empty space a whole lot greater. If you took all the space out of your body, you'd instantly disappear, and it would take a high-powered microscope to find you. Wow. This is pretty amazing that God would create in this way.
Yeah.
Sometimes scientists aren't even sure if there are really protons and electrons anymore. Maybe it's all just energy. Everything that we experience as hard, cold reality is not. It's empty space mostly. A tiny, tiny fraction of it may be energy. Actually, we could say that everything is really mostly nothing, empty space. That's interesting. Then then you have to ask them, what is the difference between the physical world and spirit world? What is so physical about the physical world?
Yes.
There's not much difference there.
There isn't much difference. Different energy level.
Different energy level.
That's right. That's
Ah.
about all there is to it. As hard as you think it is.
So actually, the Father says that the spirit world, actually the term he uses in the principle is 무형실체. So it's substantial.
Mm-hmm.
It has substance. The spirit world also has substance,
Right.
but it is without form or without shape or form. That's the actual term that he uses in Korean. In English we translate it. In the earlier, when we joined, the translation was invisible substantial world, but then someone thought, wait a second, it's not actually invisible if our spiritual senses are open, so we shouldn't say that. So they changed it, I think, now to incorporeal world or something like that, right?
Oh, okay.
Yeah. But actually, the actual Korean term is 무형실체, 무형 meaning without shape or without form, but 실체 meaning substantial. So it is a world with substance. Whereas the physical world, the actual divine principle term is the world, it has substance and it has shape or form. So,
Well, how could you see people in the spiritual world if there's no form? Isn't that aren't you just saying that there's no
no
form?
shape or form,
No
yes.
shape or form in the
yes,
spiritual world?
Yes.
But we talk about the spirit body,
Mhm.
being able to see it.
Yes.
So you lost me.
I'll figure it out. I'll tell you when I get there. I'll write a letter back from the spirit world. But anyway,
I did only one chapter on spirit world.
okay, which one is that?
Life after death. I don't. You got the web page. Look.
Okay.
You can, or I can look in the index if I see if
What? How much? Which? 10?
10. But I put most everything in the footnotes.
Mm-hmm.
But it goes on, and there's been a lot of books that came out by very respected people of integrity, having spiritual experiences, doctors and people like that. Those are the ones that I mostly included. But if you think about it, if there is life after death, then materialism, collapses basically. So, if people accept life after death, and there's everybody, millions and millions of people all over the world, all throughout history, have had experiences of spiritual world. So it's nothing new there.
I read the chapter on life after death now. Most of us go through our daily lives without thinking about or experiencing life after death, but there are some people who openly communicate with spirits and see them constantly. Whole books are written about such experiences with the dead. There are many such books available with all types of themes, and one of the main points they always try to make is to provide documented evidence that these experiences could not be faked. So how does this prove the existence of God?
Well, if materialism were the only thing there is, and that's what the theory of evolution, everything developed from material. It can't explain the brain, it can't explain the spirit as being randomly mutated into existence.
This is what the communists say, that Well, Marxism says that this what we experience as spirit is actually produced from the material mind, from the material brain. So it is something that we, I guess, human beings create God.
So when the brain dies, then there's nothing.
Right. Yeah.
So if there's something, then they have a little more explaining to do.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
What kind of reaction have you received from people on this?
I got some of the typical trolls would say things. They don't bother me. I just delete those and don't let them go through. But I had one guy who wrote me, said that I saved his life, and
Wow.
he was very, very upset with God when his father died. And so he, in his anger and his hurt, he turned away from God. But when he found my book, he started reading, and it reawakened his belief in God, and it changed his life. So I don't know if it saved his life, but it just brought him back. So.
Yeah, a lot of people feel that the existence of pain and the existence of evil in the world is a proof that God does not exist. Do you explain that in here?
I have one proof called Pain. Well, that is number 87, Pain. There are actually people in the world who do not experience pain. And that is an unbelievably tragic situation. If kids poke their own eyes out. All kinds of tragic things have happened. They burn themselves. They bleed and they don't know it. They break bones and they don't know it. Terrible, terrible tragedies if you can't feel pain. So pain is a gift, actually, that allows us to know something's wrong.
Yeah, here you say there are about 20 documented cases of American children born with a genetic defect called congenital insensitivity to pain.
Yeah.
It makes them unable to feel pain. One parent called it a living hell.
Yeah. There are videos of these people. It's there's some of the things I remember. I mean, without pain receptors, and pain receptors, you have so many of them per square millimeter on your skin, and all the organs of your body, and all those are connected by nerves to your brain. It's a phenomenal, unbelievable network and system that we have, and a system of reflexes that where if it's pain, your spinal cord can even tell you to pull your hand out of the fire before it gets to your brain. Yeah, that chapter on pain.
So pain is actually a blessing.
It is. It's a blessing. I mean, I don't think that in the original world God intended us to experience as much pain as we do. I think that I spent about 3 years doing different energy healing techniques, and found that a lot of pain can be diminished to almost nothing in a very short period of time with energy healing techniques. Emotional healing techniques are also very important. So we don't know, science doesn't know, typically a doctor is going to give you some pills, but there are other ways to heal. I mean, Jesus healed, obviously.
Yes.
And so that we don't know very much, I think, about the way to heal pain.
Right. Yeah, that's what's actually behind the opioid addiction crisis that we have right now, where so many people are resorting to addictive drugs, and even doctors are prescribing addictive drugs, which put people into a worse situation than they start out with.
When I studied emotional healing, if you have a traumatic experience and there's an actual energy that can get stuck in your body, and that energy stays there, And unless you can release it somehow over time, it will cause pain in that area. And if you have, if say anger, for example, you get anger stuck in your neck, let's say, then in other situations where you get angry, then the two kind of get together and you feel more pain, and it can build up over time and cause different illnesses and so forth. So I watched a demonstration where a chiropractor was able to demonstrate exactly where this ball of pain was by muscle testing. I don't know if you've ever seen a chiropractor go like this on somebody's arm.
No, I haven't.
But the muscles of your body are very attuned to energy. So if you, for example, Father used to do the thing to, what was it he did? You hold something and you can't pull, you can't, you're strong if it's true and you're weak if it's false. That's muscle testing. I forget. He was doing it at East Garden for a while, showing people. And the same is true. All the muscles in your body are strong when it's truthful and weak when it's unhealthy. So he was able to show that he was holding the person's arm and pushing down on it. And then when he got his fingers to a certain place, the person got weak. So, there's a lot to learn in the future about healing, about the human body.
Pain management.
Those kind of things, yeah. And a lot of it, a large percentage is emotional.
Well, tell me more about some of the reactions that you've had.
I was contacted by a doctor in Chicago, a medical doctor, a very high-level person who'd had many experiences in the operating room of being guided or with different patients. He would vaguely remember a story. A patient had some serious illness and all the symptoms indicated one thing, but something just kept telling him it was something different. And so he said, okay, this is against all typical medical protocol, but I'm going to test for this other thing that he kept being told, kept feeling it might be that. So they tested for it. That was truly what was wrong. Person went into surgery immediately, saved their life. And so the doctor began talking to other doctors in the cafeteria, and other doctors were having the same experiences. But nobody talked about because they didn't want to be considered kooky or weird, or they didn't want to have their respectable doctor, being questioned. The guy's, talking, he's hearing voices, this kind of thing. So he wrote a book. What was the name? Trying to remember the name of it. I think it's my blog. I don't know if you can go to my blog. It's physicians something. Anyway, I connected him with the king. He was on the King's Report one morning for an interview.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Untold Stories, Physicians Untold Stories, something like that. That was a very inspiring story because he talked to lots and lots of people, but the only ones he put in his book were by very, very credible, credentialed doctors.
Is this Scott?
Yes.
Scott Kolbaba?
Yes, that's it.
Yeah, Physicians Untold Stories, Miraculous Experiences. Doctors are hesitant to. Google never gives you the last few words, but the doctors are hesitant to. What does it say here? Miraculous experiences doctors are hesitant to share with their patients or anyone.
Right.
Scott J. Kolbaba, M.D., with 26 other physicians, discover the miracles in your life. Yeah.
So that was very inspiring. Other people write me and encourage me, and tell me keep going.
Keep going. So, are you keeping going? What are you doing now?
Not at the moment. I mean, I would like to see a little wider circulation of this.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I give them to the libraries. I've had inspirations to go around to churches and offer to teach the material. I just haven't had the time to put it all together with moving up here and so forth. So I want to wait until I really feel the calling to that's what I should be doing.
Yeah,
There's an awful lot of material here, so I'm hoping it will go out. I pray for it.
yeah. I think this would be a good addition to any church library. You would think, yeah, because teenagers especially are searching for God. Not just teenagers, but especially teenagers. I think are searching for God, and this kind of thing can help them on their spiritual journey. As you said, one person said that he was giving up on God, and came across this book, and it caused him to take another look at the existence of God.
Yes, and I really think it will. Most people have a scientific bent now. I mean, that's technology is really, really big, but the technology can't even touch God's technology. I mean, it's just amazing. I had, let me see here. Where's number 3? There it is. If you go to chapter 15 on computers, and this was written 2 years ago, and I'm down probably a little over halfway down. We have no computers today that can begin to approach the awesome power of the human mind. A computer comparable to the human brain, he added, would need to be able to perform more than 38,000 trillion operations per second and hold about 3,584 terabytes of memory. And this is the biggest supercomputer that they have, can do 92 trillion operations per second. So the human brain is 38,000 trillion. And the supercomputer holds 8 terabytes of storage, and they would need 3,584.
Why are people warning us about artificial intelligence then, that AI robots are going to become smarter than us and we're all going to be slaves to the robots?
I think the concern is that they'll have the robots making decisions which are harmful. Like in the stock market, they have a lot of these computer programs that sell if the stock market starts to go down. So if it starts to go down and they sell, and then all the other computers go sell, so the stock market is going to crash because all the computer programs are telling it to sell. So things like that, they got to watch out for, unintended consequences. I had another one on the brain. Where's that one? The brain. Some amazing information on the brain. Do you see it? There it is, number 16, the brain. Let me read this. The human brain consists of approximately 100 billion neurons. The same, that, by the way, is about how many stars there are in the Milky Way galaxy. A piece of brain tissue the size of a grain of sand contains 100,000 neurons and 1 billion synapses, all talking to one another. A little farther down, the world's most powerful supercomputer, the K from Fujitsu, computes 4 times faster and holds 10 times as much data as some other computer, and of course has many more bits coursing through the internet at any moment. So we're talking about the internet. The internet servers worldwide would fill a small city, and the K computer sucks up enough electricity to power 10,000 homes. The incredibly efficient brain consumes less electricity than a dim light bulb, and it fits inside your head. So your brain is so much better than a supercomputer, and yet it is so small and takes so little energy. The human brain is 75% water and has the consistency of tofu, custard, or gelatin. You could cut it with a table knife. And I mean, it's an amazing in technology, how your brain works. I mean, it's the speed of the electrical impulses in your brain is so slow, and yet because of all the connections, somehow your brain can do things that computers take years to do. It's amazing.
Well, Jim, if there are so many proofs for God's existence, how come so many people still can't get it? How they still don't believe in God?
For me, it came down to they don't want there to be God. That's it. If you go into it with an open mind, are you there or not, you have to conclude that there is God. But if you decide for some reason, if anger, resentment, all of Lucifer's feelings, you go, no God, no God. That's the only thing I can come up with. It does take somewhat of a leap of faith to ask the question and be willing to accept the answer that there is a God. I think most people are afraid. They've experienced this fallen world. They don't want to be controlled. They want to be free. But they think that freedom comes from denying that God exists, when actually freedom comes from a relationship with God.
All right, let's take another break, and we'll take our 5-brand break now, and we'll be back again with Jim after this.
At break of day, in hope we rise. We speak your name.
Little hands, shoeless feet, lonely eyes looking back at me. Will we leave behind the innocent to grieve? On their own, on the run, when their lives have only begun. These could be our daughters and our sons. And just like a drum, I can hear their hearts beating. I know my God won't let them be defeated. Every child has a dream to belong and be loved. Boys become kings, girls
Welcome back to the King's Report for Saturday, June 30th of 2018. Tim Elder and Jim Stevens in for the second king of Hyungji Moon. And during the break, Jim was about to say something really good, and I stopped him. I said, don't say it until we get back on air. So, Jim, what was it you're about to say?
I was going to tell you a story about my book. I was called for jury duty, and I had to go into this big room and wait to be called and all this kind of stuff. So I took my book along, and I was just going to read it. And I read maybe 1, 2, 3, and then I just, oh my God, this is so heavy. Each one of these is like only 2 or 3 pages long, but it's densely packed content because I summarized it. So just read. So my recommendation, if you get the book, this is not a page turner. This isn't a novel. This isn't the kind of thing where you just read it all the way from beginning to end. You won't be able to do that. I recommend that you read 1 or 2 in a sitting. That's all you should do. So if you want to go on the internet and read them one by one, just pick one that's interesting. That's the way to do it. Because, I tried to put together as much information as I could and think about it from as many different angles as I could. And I would get inspirations. Well, what about this angle? What about that angle? Things that people don't think about. My very first proof is about the men and women. And if you go to proof number 1, you typically see this diagram of evolution from monkey to man. But if you think about it, there actually had to be women side by side with the man evolving, because women's bodies are totally different than men's bodies. And they had to be reproducing all the way along the way. So if the female stays a monkey and the man develops, it doesn't work. So you just made it more than twice as hard by putting those pictures of the women there. So God gave me that inspiration. So I feel that all the way through the book, it's very dense. That's why I couldn't do it. I had to stop reading my book. That's an interesting experience. Let me do chapter 81.
Okay.
The definition of impossible. This comes from a book called The Design Revolution by William Dembski, but I kind of did it a different way than he did it. So he picked a big number, and he said if anything is not likely to happen at these odds, then it's not going to happen. There is no such thing as infinity. People say, well, given infinity, anything can happen. There is no such thing as infinity. It's the moon is not going to turn to green cheese given infinity. It's a dumb thing to think about. I did another proof on that too, but I want to do this one. So here's the number, 10 to the 150th power. So if something is not likely to that power, it's not going to happen. There's no way. So if you can show a bigger number than that, the odds against something, it's not going to happen. So where does that number come from? Which I thought was really interesting. So first you take the number of all the protons, electrons, and neutrons in the universe, the known universe. That is 10 to the 80th power. Next, you multiply that number by the number of seconds since the universe started at the Big Bang, which they calculate as 4 times 10 to the 17th seconds. So you're multiplying these numbers together, so you get a really big number. Lastly, you multiply that by what is theoretically the smallest unit of time, called the Planck unit. There are 10 to the 43rd Planck units in a second. And the Planck unit is something like the time it takes for a beam of light to pass a proton. So you multiply all those together and you get something like 10 to the 140th power. So they multiply that by a billion more just for the sake of, rounding off. And you get 10 to the 150th power. So he called that the universal probability limit. Anything less probable than that cannot ever happen. I'm calling it the definition of impossible. So on the next paragraph down, the probability of just one DNA arranging itself by accident, by chance, has been calculated 10 to the 119,000. The entire universe is 10 to the 28th inches across. It's just some big numbers.
So 119,000 is a lot bigger than 150. So it's
Yes.
way beyond this
Way.
definition of impossible.
Yes. Huge orders of magnitude bigger.
Mm-hmm.
Because each one of those is 10. So you, 119,000, 10 times 10 times 10 times 10 times 10 is for 119,000. So that was that one. You see one that interests you?
43, yeah. I wanted to go into that one because this is one that Father often talked about. That is sucking and breast milk. He would talk about how, when a baby is born, it immediately knows instinctively that it can receive nourishment from its mother's breast. And he would say, well, how does the baby know that? And he would show that as he would give that as an example of how there has to be a creator, there has to be a God.
Right, right. And it's not even that simple. I mean, the female goes through an incredible process during pregnancy, preparing for that baby to come. And it's not the first breast milk that comes, not actually the breast milk. It's called colostrum or something like that. I forget. That's what comes first. And I don't even know why, but I'm sure there's a good reason for it. But if evolution were true, you would have to evolve before the breast milk, before breastfeeding, and then at the time breastfeeding started, you had to get it right the very first time or the baby dies. It doesn't make any sense to say this could evolve step by step.
There's no learning process, as you say here.
Yeah.
And we even have pictures in the womb of a baby sucking on its thumb.
Right. So, and then research, I mean, if you go farther down, the good things about breast milk, I mean, this is like scientific research is also finding out some amazing benefits of breastfeeding. Some of the health benefits for the baby that have been determined so far: fewer illnesses, stronger immune system, less constipation and diarrhea, better stools and digestion, less allergies, lower diabetes risk, antibodies that protect against infection, all the nutritional needs of the baby during the first 6 months, stronger vision, protection against ear infections, better mental development, higher IQ, less antisocial behavior, better mouth formation for less speech problems, less eczema, improved bone quality, healthier hair, increased independence and emotional stability, eases of frustration and daily stresses. Well, who wouldn't want all those things? The design, how do you put all those things in there? And then it's also good for the mother. I mean, the whole next paragraph is all the good things that have the benefits for the mother. Here are some that researchers have discovered. Stronger bones for later in life, lower risk of osteoporosis, anemia and arthritis, lower risk of breast cancer, lower risk of cardiovascular disease, lower risk of ovarian cancer, uterine cancer, endometrial cancer, natural bonding and closeness with the baby. There's a nice one. Helps the uterus return to normal size in a timely manner. Wow. Now,
and all these extremely valuable benefits must have been working from the very first baby that sucked.
right. Oh, gosh.
So there must be a God.
Absolutely. Oh, my gosh. What else? What else? How about number 67? Blueprints for the Empire State Building. Let's imagine what and you could do this for any building or anything. The Empire State Building was, I could find blueprints. And you think about it, all the things that went into the Empire State Building. This is paragraph 4. Tremendous planning and organization were involved. They had to have plans for putting in the ductwork to circulate the air for people to breathe, needed a system for air conditioning in the summer, heating in the winter on every floor. They had to supply water for drinking, plumbing pipes for toilets and sinks on every level. They had to run electrical wires for lighting and power. They needed telephone lines throughout, systems for trash removal, elevators and stairs for people. There had to be freight elevators, all kinds of things. Now ask yourself, which is more complicated, the Empire State Building or the human body? And the answer is?
Human body.
Does anybody question that? So where are the blueprints for the human body? Who, to say that this happened accidentally, random mutation, given enough time, no. The Empire State Building would never happen given enough time. Not going to happen accidentally. And then here's a couple more things that I got inspirations that came. Oh, by the way, the Empire State Building does not move around like a human body does. It doesn't grow. It doesn't reproduce. Let's do the first living cell. Where's that one? Where is that one? Number 41. The first living cell. If you think about it, you're talking about just a bunch of chemicals there in some kind of soup, and then suddenly a lightning bolt comes down and you get the first living cell. No. Because there are at least 7 characteristics required for a living cell. And I listed the 7 there. And I started explaining them. I only explained the first 2 because I was getting, I don't know, it's got to be 5 pages long or something like that. But just to list them and you'll realize, okay, the first living cell has to be able to reproduce. Otherwise, there's not a second one, right? So if you just have a bunch of chemicals and you hit them with lightning, how do they get to reproduce? Number 2, there has to be a cell membrane. If there's nothing holding it in one place, where did that membrane come from? And the membranes are amazing. I mean, we get nutrition passing through the membranes of cells and everything. Number 3, digestion. If it's alive, it needs energy. So it has to be able to get that energy from someplace. How does that first living cell be able to break down chemicals and convert it to energy? Number 4, proteins. You've got to be able to take the amino acids and make them into proteins. In order for the cell membrane needs proteins. Everything needs proteins. Repair capability. All DNA and RNA molecules are subject to harmful mutations and damage from chemicals. There has to be a repair mechanism. I did a whole chapter on repair mechanisms for DNA. The Nobel Prize in 2015 for chemistry was given to 3 men, all discovered different repair mechanisms on DNA. 999,000 mutations out of 999 out of 1,000 mutations are repaired by DNA. It does it itself automatically. It's amazing. 6, elimination of waste. If you got a living cell, it's going to produce waste. You got to be able to get rid of it. 7, respiration. It has to be able to take oxygen in and use it. A living cell is unbelievable. It's like a little tiny factory. All things going on. There are, I read somewhere, thousands of chemical reactions going on every second in a cell. It's unbelievable. I mean, that was over and over again. I go, this is unbelievable. This is unbelievable. You know, they talk about creating life in a test tube. It was ridiculous. They created some amino acids. Oh, amino acids. Let me do chirality. Where's chirality? This is, I'll just...
40.
40, just right before that, 40. this was I was really surprised by this, but everybody knows that DNA is a staircase spiral, right? But most people don't know that every one of the molecules in the DNA is right-handed. But there are right-handed and left-handed. That's chirality, right-handed and left-handed. A molecule can be made either way. So if you make a molecule in a test tube, you'll get 50% left-handed, 50% right-handed.
Well, you've lost me. What is a left-handed molecule? I'm left-handed, so I'm interested in this.
Oh, okay. All right. Well, let me see if there was if you look at, there's a picture on the website.
Yeah, okay, I see
You
that.
see that? Okay. It's in 3 dimensions, like your hands. When you put the molecules together, you could do it 2 different ways. I don't know if you can see the difference. The way the bonds are,
Right, yeah.
they're a mirror image of each other.
I see.
Okay. So, but if you're going to build a staircase,
Well, it's just the same molecule turned around.
yes, it's turned around, but they're mirror images of each other. They're not the same shape.
Okay.
Okay. So if you're going to build a staircase, you have to keep going this way.
I see.
If you use a right-handed one and then a left-handed one, then the staircase starts going the other way.
I see. Yeah.
So if you randomly put together a staircase, it's not going to go like this. It's going to go this way, this way, this way, and it won't go anywhere. See? So every molecule, I think it's right-handed, in DNA has right-handed chirality. So if you're just taking molecules and forming DNA, and they're 50% one way and 50% the other way, it can never happen. There's 3 billion molecules in a DNA strand. So 3 billion times you had to use the right-handed one, not the left-handed one. And the RNA is all left-handed. So the odds of being able to put that together with only right-handed molecules is astronomically. It's like flipping a coin thousands and thousands and thousands of times and always getting heads. Can't do it. That's the definition of impossible. Let's see, where's another fun one? We could get really scientific, but I'd rather have fun.
What about gratitude? That just the headline attracts me. How does gratitude prove the existence of God?
Well, let me
47.
Let me find what I said about that. Where is it?
47.
47. I was thinking about, I don't know, I don't remember how what led up to each one of these, but
It says here, I recently
Thanksgiving.
celebrated
Yeah.
the American holiday of Thanksgiving, where we get together with loved ones and spend the day being grateful for our many blessings. Several people that I spoke to during the following week remarked how it was now their favorite holiday. They have a lot of quality time with loved ones and feel so appreciative afterwards. Christmas, on the other hand, has become so overtly commercialized and materialistic. It's so overly, I think. The thoughts are about what I don't have, what I need, what I want, what can I get, and how much I have to spend on others. There is such a vast contrast in the 2 holidays and the kind of feelings that come out. Take over. Go ahead.
well,
So science can now tell us why. All right. How come?
research has been done on the energies of the heart and the brain. They actually can measure the energy of the heart 8 feet away. So you and I sitting here, we're within each other's heart energy. But gratitude is an emotion, and it's a feeling, and it's an energy, which is, you can't create it by yourself. It takes 2 people, or it takes something outside of yourself. That was what I was getting at. That, and obviously we owe so much gratitude to God from the beginning. But you caught me off guard on
Okay.
this one. Yeah, I mean, gratitude.
Feelings of gratitude are at the very top of the list for creating what is being called heart coherence.
Yeah, there's a
This-
whole company out there that's called the Heart Math Institute that's researching heart energy,
Mm.
and they have a way they have a machine that you can hold on to,
Mm-hmm.
and it will gauge your the vibration, because heart coherence, when you're have coherent energy, you're much more creative, you have much more energy. When your spirit is chaotic, that's obvious to everybody. When you're feeling anger, frustration, then you make mistakes. You don't think clearly or rationally. Even your physical body, you bump into things when you're not paying attention, and so forth. So there's just, I think that's what I was going for, is that the significance and the most importance of gratitude, and feeling the greatest gratitude of all is to God. And so if we lived in that kind of gratitude every day, our lives would be so different. But it's all invisible.
Yeah.
If survival of the fittest were a true law, this is the last paragraph, then research on energy would show that struggle and conflict would produce good health. But they don't. It's the opposite.
So it's the opposite. So it's the, what would be the opposite? The harmony or the...
Yeah, harmony and gratitude.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Working together
Mm-hmm.
is what produces good health. Survival of the fittest, by the way, is interesting. That was in my... most people don't know. They hear the word survival of the fittest and natural selection, but the scientific definition of the fittest is those who survived. So it's
So it's a circular argument.
survival of those who survived.
Survival of those who survived, yes.
That's what natural selection is.
So they're just taking the result and saying,
Exactly,
okay.
exactly. We
They must be-
survived, so therefore we were the fittest.
Okay. Let's take your last one, the Messiah.
This Hyungjin inspired me for this one because he did a couple of sermons on all the documentation for Jesus' existence, compared to, we have so many manuscripts of the Iliad and these
Right.
old books and stuff, but we have thousands and thousands and thousands more about Jesus' life, and that was just, that information blew me away. So I use that in this chapter, and the whole idea is that this world is not the way it's supposed to be. That God loves us. God wants to save us from this. That's another proof for God. God's love is demonstrated through the Messiah.
You have here blood archaea. I don't even know what that is.
Archaea. Yeah, that's, most people don't know what that is either. Those are microorganisms that live in all kinds of extreme places, live everywhere. I mean, but they are a totally different. Darwin's tree of life is not true, but if you were to put the archaea on the tree of life, they'd be a totally different branch, because they're sort of like bacteria, but they're not. They're sort of like more like mammals too, something like that.
You got whales,
It's real technical.
whales,
is
camels,
whales.
emperor
They actually,
penguins.
because whales are mammals and they breathe air. So fish obviously don't breathe air. So fish emerge. This is evolution, supposedly. Fish came out of the water
Right.
on the land and they started breathing air. So how do you get a whale that breathes air that's in the water? So the mammal had to go back in the water. So they say, well, there was a bear or it was something, a big dog or a wolf or something. So it was swimming around catching fish. And then it decided it needed flippers instead of legs. So it developed flippers. And then it developed, instead of a tail that goes this way, it developed a tail that goes this way. And then its nose moved to the top of its head so it could breathe through a hole in the top of its head. And then
That's a lot of decisions.
and then it developed blubber
I see.
and it changed its rib cage because when a whale goes down deep, the pressure of the water is so much that the ribs have to be able to move and be flexible. You look at whales. Whales are so much fun because they don't have any fossils that go anywhere from a mammal to a whale. They have things they say are kind of side fossils. I spent a lot of time making that picture in the book there about the whales. That's a lot of fun, and there are so many different kinds of whales too.
Mm-hmm.
They have amazing things that they do.
And you also had
Wait,
giraffes.
wait, one more thing.
Okay.
Whales are mammals, so the babies are born alive.
Mm-hmm.
The babies have to be born tail first, because if the head came out, it couldn't breathe; it would drown in the process of birth. So the tail comes out first, and then the head comes out and it goes up and gets air. But how's it breastfeed? Underwater.
I don't know.
Yeah. The mother whale squirts milk to the baby, and the milk is the consistency of toothpaste.
Mm. Mm-hmm.
All of this fascinating stuff. I just threw in that's interesting. I threw that in. I kept whatever I came across. There's a lot of stuff I obviously didn't put in the book
Mm-hmm.
about in anything that I researched. The hardest one was the eye.
Mm-hmm. Is that the retina?
No, the eye.
the
There's
eye.
an earlier one I did on the eye.
Okay. See, I'm looking for the eye here. I see invisibility. The eye, 45.
45,
Okay, yeah.
there it is. Because there's so much information on the
Mhm.
eye.
Mm-hmm.
And the theory of evolution about the eye is just ridiculous.
Can you let us know what it is?
Well, yeah, I think I put some pictures there. They think that somehow a light-sensitive spot
Mm-hmm.
cell evolved.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so now that you've got a light-sensitive cell, then what? Somehow then it closed up. It developed like this, and then closed up and became sort of like an eye. But they never explain how you. Okay, if you're just an amoeba sitting there and you got an eye, so what? You're looking up. What good is that? What's it good for? It's keep you have to be able to have a brain so that the eye is any good. You have to connect the eye to the brain. You have to be able to analyze what the images coming to the eye mean. The eye, if you look at the connections between your eye and your brain, it's phenomenal and what's taking place when it changes the light. The light, there's a light spectrum like this, but the visible spectrum is like 1.5%. So everything we see is in that 1.5% from infrared to ultraviolet light. But there was just so much information. I had to try and just keep it down. I don't know how many pages. I ended up like 5 or 6 probably on the eye alone. But it's
It says here the human eye can detect 7 to 10 million colors. That's more than any machine known to man. All the colors we see are all within only 1.5% of the entire light spectrum. By such an amazing accident for evolutionists or incredible design for religious people, our eyes see exactly the wavelengths of light where the color is and not the others. Those colors that we are able to see happen to be truly marvelous.
And here's another fact, if the chapter on muscles, the muscles around the eye are amazing. What they do, because your eye can go in all different directions, there's actually a bone and there's a muscle that goes around the bone and hooks to the eye to pull the eye off like that, which is very unusual. And, muscles come in pairs.
Mm-hmm.
If you put your arm out, you got to have a muscle to pull your arm back. So if you evolve a muscle that goes this way, you've got to evolve a muscle that pulls it back, or else it's no good. They don't know where scientists do not know how muscles evolve. They admit it if you do the research. But speaking of the eye, there are tiny muscles in the eye that make they call jitter muscles. 30 to 70 times a second. Your eye has to go like this. It has to jitter because your brain, when you're looking at something, if it doesn't move, your brain washes it out because your brain picks up movement. So if your eyeball is not moving a little bit, you wouldn't be able to see. Everything would just go like that.
I heard of someone who had a rare disease where they could only see moving objects.
Only see moving objects. Okay,
Yes.
that would. I hadn't heard of that. But
Yeah, I read that somewhere recently.
yeah, I
And it was a disorder of some sort.
Yeah, and the jitter muscles for your eye, there's 3 different types. What?
But you just said that if we didn't jitter, we would only be able to see moving things, right?
Yes.
Yeah, so obviously, if this person has some disorder in that, whether it's not jittering, I guess, or
Yeah, maybe that's what it is
Yeah.
because he couldn't see things that were stationary.
right, yeah.
Yeah, the brain just like stops looking at it because it's seen it. I guess I don't know. What that is.
See.
Do the reticular activating system. Where is that one? RAC. This is about the RAS, the chapter 83.
Okay. Now you can go through this book in random like this without any order. That's that's really nice.
Yeah, I mean, it was God's order. It was no other order that I know of. And there were some, I did 2 or 3 in a row for animals. And I go, wow. So I thought that was for kids.
The reticular
Yeah, if you
activating
look
system.
at these, like these diagrams, the first one with all the T's, hidden in there is an L. Right now, if you were a computer, you'd have to go.
I see, I see. Yeah.
You have to go to the first one. Is that an L? No. Second one? No. Third one?
I found
no.
it.
Right. Your brain can find it really fast.
I
How's
see.
that happen? Your
Well, I
brain,
say another one. I think there's one on the right and one on the left. I see. Okay.
Good, Tim. Your RAS is working. How about down the next chart? There's a 6.
Find 6.
Find a 6.
This is more difficult. Oh, I see it. Okay.
Your brain has the ability to scan like this. And one of the reasons, the things that fascinated me about this is a whole justification for goal setting.
How's
Because
that?
like if you're looking for your wife in a crowd of people, you do the same thing as you just did with these charts. Shh, oh, there she is. Right? So if we set a goal, whatever the goal is, all the brain starts sorting out automatically the things that are not significant for getting to that goal.
I
It
see.
uses this kind of system. It hones in on things. It's an amazing ability. And so the theory of evolution doesn't make any sense if everything is random. There's no goal setting in a random system.
Right.
So, yeah, leave it there. Oh, the next chapter is homing pigeons. I like this one. Go home, right? You think of homing pigeons,
84. Okay.
84.
We're on the 101proofsforgod.com if you want to follow along with us.
You think about homing pigeons, and I tell some amazing stories about homing pigeons. Over in Europe, they race them, and there's huge prizes, thousands of dollars for the best one.
Yeah. They were used for communication in wartime or
Yeah.
in other uses. Yeah.
How they ever discovered that pigeons could do that, I don't know. But there was one, pigeons trained for racing often fly 700 miles a day. Longest distance ever recorded was in the late 1800s. A homing pigeon flew 7,000 miles back home.
No.
Now, how does he know how to do that? And okay, here's a theory of evolution. Let's see. How do we slowly and gradually build up this ability to go back home? You go get lost, and then you find your way back home. It doesn't make any sense. Pigeons, why would a pigeon ever develop this ability? Because pigeons will eat wherever they are. They don't have to fly somewhere else.
It's not
and get
necessary.
No,
for their
it's not
existence,
necessary
right, yeah.
for their survival to get this ability. I was touched. I wrote something at the end about this. This is God is showing us that all of us want to go home, and we'll go through any kind of struggle. But they don't know how the pigeons are doing it. There's different theories. Some people think they smell their way home. Some people think they have some GPS with the stars, how they get home. But they actually track them, and they don't always go the same way either. They go different ways. Read this one if you're interested in pigeons or animals. It is. I mean, researchers are out there researching all this kind of stuff.
Here's a
And it
pigeon
takes them-
reading a roadmap of the United Kingdom.
Yeah.
Probably not the way that they get home. Yes.
I mean, scientists can spend years and years of their lives just trying to figure out something
Right.
like this.
Yes.
How do they do that?
So how did the original designer come up with all these things if it takes so long for us to figure it out?
Yeah, there's one on the zoo where they've actually cataloged 1.3 million species, and they estimate there's at least 8 million species. So we haven't even touched
Oh, here we are, number 36, the zoo.
the zoo. Go to the zoo. The biggest zoo in the world has only 17,000 species, but there are over 1 million cataloged already. And going to the zoo, of course, we all love to go to the zoo. There are so many different fascinating species. You always see something you never saw before, and you're going, look at that. And I kind of believe that God is still creating more species, maybe under the ocean somewhere. I don't know. They're finding stuff all the time.
Well, they recently found some kind of a mammal in Montana, I think it was, and scientists were baffled. They said, "What is this? It's not a dog. It's not a wolf. It's not a bear. We don't know what it is."
Yeah. Where are we? Did that one.
This is a good number 50. Scientists are wrong a lot of the time.
Yeah, actually, when you do a statistical analysis of scientific truth, it keeps changing.
Yes, it does, doesn't it? One week coffee is good for you. The next week is bad for you.
Coffee particularly, yeah. But I mean, they've had all kinds of, this is good for you. Well, it's not. Fat is not good for you. Well, now it is.
Now they tell me butter is
Carbohydrates
okay.
good for you. Protein is good. Well, it's not. And it's like, they don't. It's amazing. Well, I write about a scientist who actually did some kind of analysis.
So the term settled science actually
Ridiculous.
ridiculous. Yes.
Ridiculous. Settled science. I mean, there are some things like the second law of thermodynamics, which is a law, which is violated by evolution billions of times. But settled science is no such thing. But then you can go on the internet and you go, I looked at the 20 greatest blunders in science in the last 20 years, right? The top 10 disproven theories. It goes on and on and on.
Yeah, I mean, when you think back what we learned in high school and our physics or chemistry class. I remember when we were talking about the electrons, for example. We used to draw little lines around the nucleus, and then things would travel like that. Now it's a cloud.
Right. Or a wave.
Or a wave, yes.
So there's a guy named Thomas Kuhn. He wrote a book called The Structure of Scientific Revolutions. And he was the one who popularized the term paradigm shift. According to Kuhn,
Are you still at number 30?
50.
50,
Number
I'm sorry, yeah, 50.
Yeah, I'm down to probably a third of the way down. Quote, according to Kuhn, the development of a science is not uniform, but has alternating normal and revolutionary or extraordinary phases. The revolutionary phases are not merely periods of accelerated progress, but differ qualitatively from normal science. So it's getting a little technical, but the idea is that scientific development is not a straight line. It comes in spurts, and it usually is a reaction against the settled science that isn't true. There's wars that go on constantly in every different field of science.
It says here, anomalies are ignored or explained away if at all possible.
Yep.
It is only the accumulation of particularly troublesome anomalies that poses a serious problem for the existing disciplinary matrix. A particularly troublesome anomaly is one that undermines the practice of normal science. So eventually you can't ignore the anomalies, and the anomalies have to be explained.
I think the Cambrian explosion, I have some amazing quotes in there. Where's that? From scientists who
58.
who ignored the fossil record that showed there was no that things didn't change over time.
Yeah, 58 is the Cambrian explosion.
58.
And you're saying that even now in school, kids are taught that evolution takes place gradually.
They are.
Yeah,
As far as I
which-
know, yeah. Darwinism.
Yeah,
That's not true.
Which is obviously has been disproven.
Been this theory of the evolutionists don't believe that anymore. Let me see if I can, if this is where I saw those quotes. Nah. The quotes was amazing is that it had been right there all along, that the fossil record showed that there was no slow and gradual, but they ignored it, or it wasn't a big deal. The scientists didn't think it was a big deal. Let me look up punctuated equilibrium and see if it's there. Where is it? It's hard for me to find it here. Number 73, punctuated equilibrium. So this tells the story of how Darwinists, they don't believe in Darwinism anymore. That's since 1972, but they didn't take it out of the textbooks. Jonathan Wells wrote a great book called The Icons of Evolution. I put a chapter in here about some of his stuff. It's amazing that the textbooks continue to write down false information. Here, 1972, paleontology. I'm down about 7 or 8 paragraphs in a quote here. 1972, paleontologists Niles Eldredge and Stephen Jay Gould published a landmark paper developing the theory punctuated equilibrium. The paper built upon Ernst Mayer's theory. Eldredge and Gould proposed that the degree of gradualism commonly attributed to Charles Darwin is virtually non-existent in the fossil record, and that stasis, in other words, everything stays the same, dominates the history of most fossil species. Now, let me add my own emphasis to double the impact. Darwinian gradualism is virtually non-existent, i.e. the same as non-existent. And yet they relied on that all these years. I had there was some just incredible quotes about how scientists knew that there was no change in the fossil record, but they didn't bother them. They kept believing it.
Well,
Not until they were confronted with it.
here's one question I have about evolution: is okay if an ape became a human being, was it just one ape that became a human being? Well, okay, you said there has to be two, right? A male and a
It
female.
has to be a male and a female,
All
I
right,
would think.
but why didn't it happen again? If you don't,
Oh, I see. So you get many different apes evolving into human beings?
yeah, or something similar to human beings, I suppose. In other words, was there only one change? So I'm a little bit confused about that. But as you say, the thing about male and female is has not something I had thought about before, because all these pictures we see, we only see the male ape developing into a human being, right? That's the pictures that
But
are in all
actually,
the
you have to
textbooks.
take out everything in the middle. There's no fossil record for
Right,
that.
right,
You
right.
take it all out.
But anyway, even if that were true, you'd have to ask, okay, but what about the woman?
Absolutely.
It has to be a parallel evolution, if it were evolution.
If it were
Yes.
evolution, yeah. Well, they look at the genome, the DNA genome of chimps and human beings, and they say that the difference. They used to say the difference. The chimps are 98% human, right? Well, it turns out that research was flawed, and it's more like 85%. But even given 98% the same, the DNA, that means there are 60 million, because a DNA strand is 3 billion characters in the DNA strand, 2% of that is 60 million. So you'd have to have 60 million changes at a minimum between a chimp to a human being. And that's at 2%. But if it's 85%, it's way, way more than that. But to get a human being to be born with the mutation, to grow up and then reproduce with the same mutation, to keep the thing going 60 million times. I mean, a human being has to be almost 20 years old to reproduce. If you multiply that times 60 million changes, there hasn't been life on Earth that long. So it's all mathematically impossible. You just can't do it. There are so many ways you cannot do evolution. It does not work. Totally flawed.
And yet it's still
And
taught in school, and if anyone questions it, if a teacher questions it, he or she is fired.
That's right. Professors are fired.
Professors are fired.
It's crazy.
It's kind of a religion, isn't it? It's a cult.
It's a mind control cult.
Yes, it is. It's a mind control
Totally.
cult.
Yeah,
With extreme belief. We won't,
That's it.
let's not go there. Yes, let's not go there this morning. Yes, we have a new job for Elizabeth Vargas. Yes, okay. Okay. Well, this is really fascinating. There are others here that hospice workers, proteins, the
hospice workers. I'll just tell you the synopsis
Okay.
of that one. There are many, hospice workers are people who work with dying, and they're
hospice is basically
facilities.
a place where someone goes when the hospital says, "Okay, we've done everything we can."
Right.
Goes and then they go to a hospice, and basically they're kept comfortable until they finally pass.
That's right.
Okay.
That's right.
Yeah.
But there are an extraordinary number of books coming out from hospice workers who testify to life after death. And that's what's going on. We're seeing that more and more. If you just do a search, you can see how many new books are coming out. So I listed a bunch of them and some of the information. But hospice workers deal with people who are dying every day, and they talk to them, and the people are seeing their relatives come visit them. All these things are happening. Life after death is totally confirmed by hospice workers who are open to the idea of life after death. Sorry. Oh, you should read the DNA. Let me jump to DNA
Okay.
21. Where is that? there's some just DNA is amazing. If you laid out all of your DNA in your body end to end, it would reach to the sun and back 600 times. That's paragraph 3.
Mm-hmm.
Because every cell in your body has about 6 feet of DNA.
Every cell, what? Every cell in your body has 6 feet of DNA. How does it all fit in there?
It's so tiny.
But you said 6 feet, right?
6 feet, yes.
So every.
If you stretch it, if you take all the DNA in the cell, one cell,
Mm-hmm.
and stretch it out, because you got,
So it's all squished together.
and it's tiny.
It's tiny.
It's so tiny. That's the amazing thing about DNA.
Okay.
Let me, I had some,
If you laid the DNA for one cell end to end, it would stretch about 6 feet.
Yeah.
But would only about 50 trillionths of an inch wide. I see. Okay. So, all right.
that's how tiny it is.
If it's end to end, it's 6 feet, but it's only 50 trillionths of an inch wide.
Yeah.
That's a lot of stuff.
I thought I had it here. The how much information? It's in the chapter on information, I think. Where's that one? Chapter 37.
Once again, we're on the 101proofsforgod.com.
So there's enough capacity in a single human cell to store the Encyclopedia Britannica 3 or 4 times.
Wait a second. Kids today don't know what the Encyclopedia Britannica is. They've never seen one.
Okay, so for those of you watching,
There's a picture here for those of you.
there you go. Yeah, it was 30 books.
30
Each
books.
one was really big.
Yes, it was about that big.
Every school had one when I grew up.
Yes.
So every single cell,
Mm-hmm.
you could put the Encyclopedia Britannica 3 or 4 times.
Okay. Probably the Wikipedia. Probably the Wikipedia,
in
too.
a single cell.
Okay.
The whole internet.
Yes.
Good. Skip down another paragraph.
All right.
To illustrate further, the amount of information that could be stored in a pinhead of DNA is staggering, equivalent to the information content of a pile of paperback books 500 times as tall as the distance from the Earth to the Moon, and each with a different information in the book.
Mm-hmm.
No repeating. So, one of the big things nowadays about God's existence is information.
Mm-hmm.
You know, the theory of evolution provides no mechanism for information to develop. It has to come from a intelligent source. So I even did a chapter on SETI, S-E-T-I, the search for extraterrestrial
Right, yeah.
intelligence.
Mm.
So, and they developed these algorithms for what would be intelligent signal coming from space. Well, some scientists turned around and applied the algorithms for intelligent signals to DNA and found out it was intelligently designed. Some scientists didn't like that.
Mm.
So, but information, the amount of information that's in the body and the cell and every creation is staggering, just staggering. So it had to come from somewhere and had to be intelligent.
So the Second King quotes this statistic where he says that the more and more scientists basically are beginning to believe in some kind of a
Intelligence.
intelligence, not necessarily
Sure.
God, but
Yeah.
saying that there has to be something behind the creation, an intelligent designer or something anyway.
Right.
And
More
I guess
and more. I don't think they're talking about it publicly, but they're recognizing that there probably has to be.
you mentioned the doctors in Chicago,
Those are medical doctors.
medical doctors, yeah.
experienced
Well, they're
so
scientists, yeah. Mhm.
Yeah, they're not researchers, but they're. Here's a funny one. The latest thing, they said, well, we don't know where life came from, but it probably came from outer space.
Oh,
In other words, it wasn't God.
but where did that life come from?
They don't ask that question.
I see.
See, they just avoid. It's like, pushing off the inconvenient truth.
So, Jim, do you plan to do anything with this book?
I
I don't mean to put you on the spot, but actually, I do mean to put you on the spot because this is an incredible thing that you've produced here, and it would be a shame, I would think, just to sort of let it sit and not evolve.
I would like to probably give speaking, go out and speak about it and share with people. I've been praying to know the best way to get it out. I want it to go viral on its own more, because just one-to-one is such a slow process. And in the digital age, I think things can go much more quickly. And I believe that God wanted me to write this book, so I have fulfilled that part of what He asked for. So sometimes God does something and it sits there for quite a while until the time is right, and other things have to fall into place. So we'll see.
Well, I hope that like with evolution, there's a lot of stasis, and then there's right?
Exactly. Growth.
With God's creation, actually, that's not evolution. That's God's creation.
Yeah.
I guess but I hope that today's appearance on the King's Report, maybe this is also
Cool.
God's guidance for Him to communicate to you something about what to do next with this book. Yeah, this is it's available online at 101proofsforgod.com. But I think there's a value in having this sort of sitting around the house, and where you can just sort of pick it up one day and randomly say, chapter 68, symmetry, Or
I gave it to one brother, and I heard back he's been reading it to his kids, and they've been discussing it, his middle school kids. So.
And there's a lot of pressure for kids, especially in high school and college age, to deny God.
Right.
I felt that pressure. I remember when I was especially in college, because people try to pretend that they are logical and reasonable, and they try to say that the people who believe in God are just sort of believing in a myth, and that they are the smart ones and the logical ones. So there's a lot of pressure. So I think something like this on a college student's desk would be a very good thing. Christmas is coming up. Maybe people can give this to your college-age sons, daughters, nephews, nieces, and so forth. Yeah, or buy one for yourself at 101proofsforgod.com. Yeah. Well, thank you very much, Jim, for coming today
welcome.
and giving us the benefit of your research and your prayers, and a tremendous amount of research went into this, and a tremendous amount of commitment went into this. I think this is a wonderful production. And if other people have their ministries that they would like to come in and talk about, you're certainly welcome to do that. I have the honor of being able to do the King's Report on Wednesday morning and Saturday morning, but especially Saturday morning we have more time. Wednesday we only have an hour and a half to do in English. I'd like to have you come in and talk about your ministry. And if you need to connect through Zoom or through the internet, then we can probably arrange that as well. Thank you very much, Jim, and thank you everyone for coming in, for tuning in this morning, or for watching this video later on. I pray that God can inspire you to conduct your ministry. I'm sure God has something in mind for each and every one of us. We just have to listen to Him and open our hearts to Him, so that we can accomplish His will and help to bring His kingdom on earth. All right, thank you, everyone, and God bless, Godspeed, and may His kingdom come.
Amen.